Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is author and athlete Brad Kearns discovering ways to be healthy, fit, and happy in hectic, high-stress modern life. So let's slow down and take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and expertly balance that competitive intensity with an appreciation of the journey. That's the theme of the show. Here we go. The Get Over Yourself podcast is brought to you by Almost Heaven, beautiful compact home use sauna kits, ancestral supplements, grass-fed organ meats in a capsule, DNA Fit, genetic testing for custom diet and exercise recommendations, Integro Health, high-potency liquid probiotic called Flourish, Organifi, organic powdered superfoods, delicious green, gold, and red powders, Wild Idea Buffalo, sustainable, grass-fed, beyond organic, and check out the bradkearns.com/shop page. That's my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance. And here we go with the show.
We have a world of people who are either overtrained or undertrained. There are too few of us in the middle, and that's really sad. And the overtrained people are no better off than the undertrained people. All these stories you hear about, mothers who, their child is under the car and stuck, and the mother lifts the car. I mean, how does that happen? It goes back to the autonomic nervous system we talked about earlier, is that we all have this capability. But how do we translate that to getting stronger without getting sore? We have a very serious epidemic of weakness throughout the world. And I'm not just talking about people who are couch potatoes.
Let's talk about ancestral supplements. If you're into ancestral health, primal paleo, keto, you know the importance of consuming these unique agents contained in bone marrow, in the nose-to-tail organ meats, liver, kidney, all that stuff, the great bone broth benefits. Well, how's it going? For me, since years ago when Dr. Kate Shanahan asserted the importance of these wonderful nutritional benefits that you can't get elsewhere, not too good. I don't know how to cook a liver or a kidney, but now your problems are solved forever when you go to ancestralsupplements.com, a wonderful company filled with people who are living the dream, walking their talk, and bottling up the purest, cleanest sources of grass-fed organ meats, kidney, liver, bone marrow, all in these wonderful capsules. I dump them in my smoothie every day. I'm healthy. I don't have to worry. It's an incredible dietary boost. And this is so different from swallowing a bunch of those synthetic vitamins and those giant bottles from the big box stores. Highly questionable health practice. This stuff is the real deal. Grass-fed organ meats, pure as can be. Ancestralsupplements.com. Hey listeners, it's more from Dr. Phil Maffetone. Hope you enjoyed the previous show. And in this show, we focus on athletic peak performance and where we are headed, the future. Is someone going to break the 2-hour marathon? Can a human do it? Yes, it's possible. Phil wrote a book called 159 and has some radical theories about how it's going to be done. Hint, he thinks that it's going to happen by a barefoot runner because you're saving the weight of those shoes and using the full capabilities of your barefoot to spring off the ground and absorb impact properly. Radical stuff. Yes, this guy is out there off the beaten track. That's what makes him so brilliant and such a pioneer and the leader in transitioning the crazy ideals of endurance training into something that's more sensible, where you pursue your fitness goals and balance your health as well. That's what Phil's all about. So in this show, he gets into some interesting tips and tricks where you can challenge yourself with high intensity fitness efforts, but not compromise your health and break down that happens so easily when you do these overly stressful high-intensity workouts. So short bursts, things like that. He has a concept called slow weights. I did a show called micro workouts, same kind of concept where you do these really brief bouts of strength, explosive strength, and then go about your busy day without trashing your body and asking for prolonged recovery. So let's hear from the pioneer in endurance training. More wonderful insights. I think you'll love his meandering style where we're just cruising through the conversation. But listen carefully because he comes up with these kind of a one-liner sometimes, and it's a brilliant insight that really leads to wonderful breakthroughs for yourself when you consider this stuff and implement it and be willing to expand your mind and go off the beaten path with some of these insights. Dr. Phil Maffetone, enjoy. This amazing phenomenon's been taking place in the marathon scene that you predicted a while back. You actually published a book called 159 about the amazing, possibly distant dream of an athlete breaking 2 hours for the marathon, which if you calculate the running pace is an insane pace per mile that any jogger can associate and just shake their head because we're talking about 439, 438 per mile. And now Eliud Kipchoge, one of the greatest distance runners who's ever seen on earth, definitely the best marathoner, is knocking on the door. He just did a 2:01:39 in Berlin in middle of 2018. What do you think, Phil?
No surprise. Kipchoge was one of the candidates I listed in my book. At the time when I was writing the book, he had won some big 5K races. He was a great middle distance runner. I mean, I think when he was 18, he won the world championships and beat the Moroccan who had run sub 8 minutes for 2 miles. And so, and then I think he ran his first marathon maybe by the time I was finishing the book. I don't remember, but he had run and won the Hamburg Marathon in Germany and was ran 2:05 or something. And that was really irrelevant. Although having a positive marathon as your first event is very helpful because it's such an experience-based race. But the fact that he was such a great 5K runner and then he moved up intelligently to the marathon made him a 159 candidate in my book, literally. And so this is no surprise. I'm a little concerned about him being abused because he participated in that Nike stunt whenever that was, last year or whenever, where, they had this really, it was just a stupid event. It was a stunt and it was a marketing campaign.
Yeah, they tried to organize a unofficial attempt at breaking 2 hours by having the athletes run around an automobile racetrack with pacers and all these things that are illegal and inauthentic to an actual race. And at that point, he ran just over 2 hours, 2 hours and 36 seconds or something. So it was all documented and branded by Nike. So the pure runners,
it was a big hoax. But it continues because he's, this is a problem that I've always talked about with the athletes I work with, because it was a stress. And how much are you going to let your sponsors dictate how many public appearances can a person make around the world in the course of a year? Well, if you're sponsored by a company and they're paying you money, they want you to appear in as many places around. They don't care how much you travel. And that wears athletes down. And I'm seeing it happen with Kipchoge, and hopefully, he's going to recover from that, and of course, breaking the world record in Berlin just a couple of months ago has got him back on the circuit, most likely, and hopefully, he'll be around a few more years because I don't know how old he is. Is he 32?
Yeah, 33, something like that.
Yeah, so he in my eyes, he has not reached his marathon peak yet. And so at this stage, in this countdown to 159, like, back in the 50s when Bannister was trying to break 4 minutes. We get closer and closer, and now we're not talking about big leaps anymore. We're talking about a nudge. What's going to nudge a runner to 159? What's going to nudge Kipchoge or others? There's probably a number of marathoners who are capable, if they have the right nudge. What's gonna be the nudge for Kipchoge? I think one thing, which will never happen unless he loses his contract with Nike, is that if he just ran the next marathon barefoot, it could nudge him to 159.
Well, if you're running on a paved road, I mean, your argument is that there's less weight on the foot, which is a massive performance variable. There's charts, you can find them on the internet, where if you switch from training shoes to racing flats, you can save 11 minutes off your marathon time due to the 6 less ounces on each foot. But I'm wondering, like, the traction on a paved road, is that going to be compromised by barefoot versus a shoe with a rubber grip on it?
I don't think so. The bigger question is, can he physically do it after all these years of running in shoes? He no doubt grew up running barefoot. He ran to school, and, those kids didn't, their families didn't have money. And so a lot of them didn't have shoes, and they got their first shoes when they, won a local race. Because the shoe companies are all there handing out shoes. And so, can he revert back to barefoot running? I don't know that he runs barefoot at all. He may or he may not, but the barefoot running he did enabled him to run longer and longer distances barefoot, and it enabled him as a young person to develop that spring mechanism, which is really one of the amazing things in the human body, where you hit the ground, and then your foot takes the gravitational energy from hitting the ground, and it absorbs that energy into the foot and the leg. It's stored in the tendons in particular. And then the body is able to take that energy and convert it to mechanical energy, much like sunlight comes to Earth. It goes through photosynthesis, and humans eat those plants, or they eat the animals that eat the plants, and that energy is continually converted in our bodies when we talk about fat burning and sugar burning. So in this case, it's gravitational energy that is converted to mechanical energy to propel an athlete to move forward. Now, when you become proficient at running barefoot as a young child, when you eventually put shoes on, you're still pretty good at that propulsion. But I think it's enough of a benefit that someone like Kipchoge could be, with the right day, like he had in Berlin this year, could be propelled to 1:59:59. And there's, in my book, I talked about all kinds of things that runners could do, but they were still running, 2:04, I don't remember. They were still several minutes away, and to get several minutes off a world marathoner's time would require a lot of different things. Well, it still requires a lot of different things potentially, but it'll only take one or two of them, and the shoe issue is one. The other is a biomechanical balancing act, I call it, whereby athletes in the course of training have a tremendous amount of wear and tear, even the ones that train properly. And, you go out and run for 2 hours on your long Sunday run, that's a lot of wear and tear. You feel it the next day. You feel it by the end of your run. But certainly by the next day, you feel like you've run for 2 hours. Why do you feel it? Well, that's because of the wear and tear on the body, and primarily that comes from the muscles. The joints are affected, the bones, the ligaments, all the soft tissue, but the muscles are what are affected the most, and it's the muscles that have to recover and bring you back to a good feeling Monday morning or Tuesday morning when you after you take a day off or whatever. And this wear and tear builds up. And having worked with athletes for a long, long time, one of the things I always did was, in addition to all the training and nutrition, dietary stuff, was to help them balance their muscles right up until race day, right up until the gun goes off, literally sometimes, working on these muscles to fine tune them. It's like a race car, I mean, if you don't tune up the race car's engine, it's not going to run as well. And for years that, race cars were just, people just had cars and they went to the track. And then they started realizing, hey, if we tune this up so that the air flows better, or the wheels are turning in a particular way, we could take minutes off, a 500-mile race. And I don't think that has happened yet in sports. There are a number of professionals who do that, but for the most part, it's not being done. So I think that's another thing that could nudge him, because it improves it improves running economy. It can improve running economy significantly.
Are you talking about a typical massage therapy, deep tissue treatment for athletic massage, or are there other modalities that are also effective?
I'm talking about evaluating. This is very individual, so we need to evaluate the individual's gait and posture. And then, when you look at someone's gait and you see some irregularity, it's because there's muscle imbalance. And assessing muscle imbalance, you can do by visually observing the gait, getting an idea, this is the gluteus medius muscle that's causing that excess tilt to the left more than to the right. And then posture is another part of that. And then physically evaluating the muscles with manual muscle testing. And then when you determine the cause of muscle imbalance, you can then use biofeedback to correct it. And it's not, we're not talking about having to lift weights to get stronger. We're talking about a neurological phenomenon where muscles in the process of wear and tear, muscles develop imbalance. And an imbalanced state is two or more muscles where one is too loose and one is too tight. And that affects the joint, it affects the posture, it affects the gait. And over the course of a marathon, it affects running economy significantly. Because running at the same pace, as an example, with muscle imbalance, could raise your heart rate 5 or 6 beats.
Oof.
And obviously over a marathon, that's going to be quite dramatic.
So if we want to go look for a certain type of practitioner that can help us with the muscle balance, is this sort of a ART person, or what kind of things do you support the people out there doing this kind of work?
Good question. There are a lot of practitioners who use manual muscle testing as one of their assessment tools. And it's one of their assessment tools because you have to have the whole package. You have to do a good history. You have to know what questions to ask. You have to evaluate the diet because that affects muscles. You have to be able to look at the gait. You have to understand sports, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you assess an imbalance, how you correct it may be related to what your area of expertise is, but it really doesn't matter. I don't care how you fix muscle imbalance as long as you actually correct it. And so it's the assessment that's really important. And a lot of it is asking around who does muscle testing in their office, and that's a good starting point.
Then, of course, we have all the dietary improvements we can make, and then with the emphasis on aerobic training and avoiding those overly stressful workouts or the pattern of overly stressful workouts, I think we'll start, if we're talking to the general audience about how to improve their time, not that they're worried about breaking 2 hours, but you can honor these lessons that the elite runners are showing us, the elite athletes in every sport, about how to do it right.
Correct. And, the elite athletes, the lead pack, they're the only ones improving. Everyone else, from a sports standpoint, so all the other marathoners are slowing down. Now, not everyone, but there are age group records being broken. People, in their short span of getting into the marathon will run a personal best. But as a whole, people are slowing down, and they have been for decades. And it's really sad. It's correlated with the increase in excess body fat, coincidentally, which is no surprise.
Well, there's also increased participation in these marathon events, unlike the old days where only serious runners would dream of running 26 miles, and now you go to LA Marathon, and if you're not entered in it, you'll get funny looks at the Pilates studio or going to the nearby Whole Foods market. So I guess it's a positive that people are going out and getting onto the starting line rather than seeing a smaller field, but definitely running vastly slower, the average participant, or even the number of people that are breaking 3 hours has declined over time, even as the fields have gotten much bigger.
It's true that it's great to see participation, continually going up, but it's not why people have slowed down. Because when you look at the statistics, when you look at the data, the new participation factor is considered in that assessment, and not counting those new folks coming in and walking a marathon, for example, or jogging and walking and jogging and walking. That has been factored into this issue of people getting slower. It's not just in marathons. The statistics are including 5 and 10K, or 5 or maybe 5K, 10K, half marathons and marathons. If you look at the data, but this was evident for me in the 80s by looking at by taking a good history. Patient would come in, I would do a long history. You've been running 10Ks. How long you've been running? 5 years. Okay. When was your last PR? 3 years ago. That was a typical response, and I hadn't seen that in the 70s. It just was evident, and then correlating with the overfat pandemic was a clear observation as well. And now the data of all that stuff is quite clear.
So what's going on? Are the training methods inferior, or is it mostly the diet aspect?
I think it's a combination of both. Although it's what's more primary? Well, the diet is more primary to the training. So what you do with your diet affects your training. You cannot as Tim Noakes says, run away from a bad diet.
You can't outrun a bad diet. I love it.
Yeah, growing up in the running boom,
we thought you could.
Everybody, I'd be at a I was new in practice, so I actually went to parties because I thought, well, I got to get to know people, and I'd go to these, running parties, and they'd see me watching them eat. They'd say, "Oh, you're the guy that doesn't want people to eat sugar." I said, "Well, yeah, it's because it's not healthy." "Oh, I'm gonna run it off tomorrow. I'm gonna run an extra mile." And I'd say, "Well, you're gonna run an extra mile. You're gonna burn more sugar calories, but you're not gonna burn any more fat calories." And then they'd walk away, and I'd make another enemy. It wasn't good for meeting women.
You have to. Any good date ends with a treat at the dessert shop, I guess.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're on to another show in the sports realm. Are you okay on your time, Phil?
I'm okay with my
Okay,
time.
good. I have some questions for you. For some common themes that the Primal Endurance listeners, readers are weighing in on, and one of them, especially of particular interest to me, is as we get advancing in our years, do we need to rethink the basic premise of these endurance goals that are so popular, especially the landmark distances of the marathon and the Ironman if you happen to be a triathlete? And is this sort of, is this young person's game and then starts to become inherently unhealthy because we're over 40 or over 50 or over 60? What do you think about that?
I don't think the age is the factor. I think the health and fitness of the person is the factor. And in fact, in endurance sports, even 5K, 10K, half marathon, triathlon, and especially the ultra events, young people need to be careful because they're the ones vulnerable to get hurt because of their age. And as we get into the later 20s and into our 30s, like earlier I said, Kipchoge was just not quite at his prime yet at age 32, 33. I think for a pro marathoner, you could be running your best because your abilities at age 36, 37, 38, 39, that's where you're hitting your peak. It was no surprise to see Di Castella, and I may have this reversed, win a gold medal in the marathon at age 39, and then turn around and break the world record in the marathon at age 40. I worked with Priscilla Welch, who at age 42 won the New York City Marathon women's division. Not a surprise. The media, they say, well, how does she do that? And I said, well, why wouldn't she be able to do that at age 42? And of course, that doesn't make a good quote. So they go on and ask somebody else, and they print in the paper, well, it's a freak of nature in that example.
Right.
But we're endurance animals, and we, in a sense, different parts of our physiology progress and hit peaks, not a tight peak, not a sharp peak, but a long peak. So Kipchoge may be at a peak now, but he could still improve until he's 40 if he chooses to do that. And people are in the same boat, but that doesn't mean when you hit 40 you're over the hill and you can't race anymore. If you're healthy, you can still race. And depending on when you start your marathon training, You could be running a personal best at age 60. Is it healthy? It could be healthy. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't do it in a healthy way. They develop, their knee breaks down. They get exhausted. Their heart stops. There's some serious problems that people are creating for themselves. And they're all preventable things that are simply poor health and a lack of proper fitness.
So it can be healthy pursuits if you do it correctly, and we've seen the proof that the aging endurance athlete getting up there to 40. Mark Allen won Hawaii at 38 in his fastest time, and so many great examples. Not all of them freaks of nature, just people that have had a sensible approach and built on their previous success and training. But what about in the explosive sports, Phil? We don't see too many examples of people carrying on. I know Linford Christie won the 100-meter gold medal, so he was the fastest human in the world at the age of 34, which was way older than the typical sprinter in their mid-20s. And we see some guys carrying on in the NFL and the NBA as they get up to 40, still showing that explosiveness, but it doesn't seem as common. Is there something physiological that's we're going to lose it a little more pronounced when we're getting up after age 30 or some younger benchmark?
Sure, there are aging factors in sprinting, and the people you mentioned are what we call outliers. They're not the norm. If you look at a bunch of athletes and where do they peak in their sprinting ability, most of them end in the mid 20s, maybe. I don't know what the data looks like these days, but you'll see a few people who are in the late 20s, and you'll see some people who are in the 30s, and they're just outliers, and they are maintaining their fitness quite well, without a doubt. We all get slower. We all start losing muscle by age 30. That's our peak of our muscle mass. And no matter what we do, we start losing some of that. And we start losing the neuromuscular ability at that age. So we don't sprint as well. But what we have is the ability to be as fast as our peers at age 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, as we were when we were 18 and 20 years of age. And the nice thing about that is we have this thing called Masters Track and Field, where we don't have to compete. Old folks like us don't have to compete against 20-year-olds. We compete against people in our age group, and that makes it a lot of fun. And that can be a healthy thing as well. So I think there's so many opportunities for people to participate in physical activities that they want to participate, that they enjoy participating in.
So if you're an old-time jock back in your day, like you were a track star in college, and you want to get back into it or continue competing in some way, shape, or form, are there some modifications that you would make to the training approach on account of being 50 or 60 or whatever?
Not a lot, but yes. If you're gonna, if you want to compete in the 60 age group, for example, or the 70 age group, you've got to be a little careful because you're a little more fragile. You've got to make sure you recover well. That's really a big component. You can't go to the track with a bunch of masters track athletes who are in their 40s, which is often what happens. I've heard that so many times. Oh yeah, I work out with the masters. Oh, how old are they? Well, most of them in their 40s, some are in their 50s, and you're 65. So you've got to individualize it. I think a lot of, when we talk about sprinting, a lot of benefits. First of all, you still have to build an aerobic base. And then you put your sprinting ability on top of that. And doing high intensity interval training is how you do that. And you can do that on a track, or you can do it on the road. And there's a lot of little tricks that are low stress, quickly to recover from workouts, like running at race pace for 7 seconds, and then walking for until you're recovered, which might be 30 seconds or a minute, and doing that twice a week. So in this kind of world where we're trying to do quick things, whether it's tennis and racquetball, swimming, short distance swimming, even golf, you've got explosive activities, and we need to be careful, because when we're 60 and 70 and we're swinging a golf club, we're more vulnerable to little imbalances, those muscle imbalances, as an example, than when we don't recover as well. So we need to be careful, but having a great aerobic system is a requirement, and then recovering is important. And the human body has the ability to run across the street when it starts to lightning outside, and we're there's nowhere we could hide. We can't go in a building, so we have to run across the street to go into a building. Well, everyone can do that. Everyone who can walk will be able to do that at varying paces. But we have this autonomic nervous system that goes into fight-flight mode. And when it does, we can do amazing feats. We have amazing strength. And so we already have that sprinting ability. We can get that serve that seems to be so far away from us on the tennis court easier than you think. But we have to have the foundation, that aerobic system, and then we have to perform those feats in the course of training. But we also have to recover. And in people, once you get to 50 and above, you're recovering because of muscles, because of the neuromuscular, slightly less proficiency. Our recovery takes longer, and we have to let the body recover. And if we don't, we get in trouble.
What kind of parameters do you recommend to assess whether the subject is recovered and ready for another explosive workout?
People who are experienced and honest with themselves can use...
Wait, experience and honest? Wait.
Both things at once. What a package. Can use, how do you feel in the morning when you wake up? If you wake up and you just, you touch the floor and your joints are like, whoa, what's going on? That's not what it's all about. And so if you're feeling that way, you're not recovered, and you're not going to recover that day, most likely. What I still like to see people do, even track and field athletes, even tennis, whoever you are, if your goal is to measure something that is indicative of improved health and improved fitness, the whole package, do an MAF test. Because if you're getting slower on your walk, your ride, your jog at a submax heart rate, however you want to do this MAF test, if you're getting slower, there's a problem. Now, you do slow down over the years, over the decades. But I'm talking about in a relatively short period of time. If you're going out, if you're 65 years old, you go out and you can jog at your MAF heart rate, and you can jog at a 9:30 pace. And then all of a sudden you notice, oh, hey, I'm now at 10-minute pace. That's a problem. That's a red flag. And you've got to stop and say, hey, what am I doing wrong? Because that should not happen.
Right. It's either overstress, overtraining, or you're sitting on your butt too much and declining fitness. But the latter one is so improbable to the listening audience and the people that are devoted to fitness. It's almost always that we're over the edge with some component of life that's not promoting good recovery.
Yeah, we have a world of people who are either overtrained or undertrained. And there are too few of us in the middle. And that's really sad. And the overtrained people are no better off than the undertrained people.
Well, look at the heart disease risk factors and the increased incidence of AFib with the long-term devoted athletes. It's almost like a race between the junk food chomping video gaming person next door. You guys are both blasting your hearts into illness and disease.
Yeah, I wrote a paper with a sociologist a few years ago on the sociology. I forgot what it's called. It's the sociology of no pain, no gain. Basically, showing that no pain, no gain is a concept that began many, many years ago with Benjamin Franklin, actually, and not in the sports world. But the sports world has adopted it as their own mantra, and if you look at the conditions like that cardiac problem and depression and the physical injuries, we see about the same prevalence in the physically active people as we do the inactive people. So,
that's terrible. So the person who threw out their back in the waiting room and is sitting next to you, and you're wearing your sweatsuit and holding your back, and they're holding their back, and they did it by picking up a 2-pound bag of flour, and you did it by doing your 5th CrossFit workout in the same week. Yep.
Or they intended to pick up the 2 pounds. As they were reaching for it, their back went out. Yeah, I mean, look at, and I noticed that in practice early on, and I talked about it often, and people would say, "You're crazy," and if you just talk to clinicians who look at these things, they know that, and then in recent years we started seeing studies that talked about this, and I referenced some of them in that article that is on my website.
Now, you also mentioned you don't want people to be sore after their strength training sessions, and I'm personally having a hard time with that here at age 53 and trying to go hit my hexagonal deadlift bar on a regular basis or do other fun stuff in the gym. I'm not super consistent where I'm going in there 3 times a week for an hour. I'm trying to be more intuitive and do these brief explosive workouts, but I'm often finding that muscle soreness come up the next day because whether my approach is flawed or it's just a function of needing to tone down the intensity of the workout, I don't know.
Good question. This is a big problem. We have a very serious epidemic of weakness throughout the world. And I'm not just talking about people who are couch potatoes. I'm talking about runners, for example, endurance athletes. And most people know when they're weak, but if you want to evaluate it, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One is you can get a grip strength device where you squeeze. Hand grip reflects body strength, so you can get these little grip devices that measure how much power you're able to grip. And and a lot of people, that shows that they're very weak. The other way is to do a jump test, a standing jump test, where you're barefoot, you reach up, you're flat-footed, you reach up. You've got to have a high ceiling to do this. You reach up, you mark the wall, put a piece of tape on it, whatever, and then you have somebody standing on a chair watching to see how much higher you are able to jump above that mark. And it's amazing how, most endurance athletes can't even get over 12 inches of jump height.
So you don't need a high ceiling after all.
Well, maybe you don't.
Okay, so 12 inches. Do you have some benchmarks from research that are, basic, objective, exceptional? Any numbers out there? I know we have the NBA guys where we're talking about their 36-inch vertical leap and so forth.
I have a lot of data on that, yes. But it's best to look at, what happens to, say, a runner as they age. What happens to a runner? Well, Kipchoge, okay? When he was running 5,000 meters and winning, I bet his jump height was close to 25, 30 inches.
That's so funny because the marathon has long been the dumping ground for the endurance athletes that didn't have enough speed to be competitive at 5 and 10K. And now we're looking at the guy who's going to shatter the records and win the gold medals. It has this explosive power in his body, as well as the ability to handle the endurance regimen, which probably, Wade Van Niekerk probably couldn't do that well as a marathoner, the guy who just broke the world record in the 400 meters. So at some point, you're going to sacrifice your explosiveness. Is going to be difficult to train into a marathon person. But
that's true. Yeah. That's true. But when I saw Kipchoge's 5K history, I knew he was potentially a great marathoner in the making, if he could just hold on to enough of that strength. That is lower body strength. And so so fast forward to the gym, your workout, your muscle soreness that you develop. When we get sore, the muscle gets weaker. And now we have to look at tradition. What does tradition dictate in weightlifting circles, in strength training circles? Tradition dictates that we work out hard, we fatigue the muscle, which means we get sore, and then the muscle recovers, and it takes 24 hours. Actually, it takes 72 hours in many cases to recover. And I wrote an article called The Weakness Window. That period of time, that 24 to 72 hour period after you do strength training, is a window of weakness. Your muscles are weak because you worked out to the point of fatigue and the muscles got sore. And that soreness, now that whole physiology has to be adapted to, and that's what recovery is all about. And so during that period, what are you going to do physically? Whatever you do physically, if you're going to play golf or if you're going to go for a run, you're vulnerable to get injured because your muscles are weak because you did this workout that caused them to weaken. So the answer to the problem is, how can we build strength without getting weak muscles? These windows of weakness twice a week. That's a problem. It's also a problem because that approach to strength training also builds muscle bulk. And the last thing you want as an endurance runner is more muscle bulk, because your running economy will get trashed. You were talking about ounces before in shoes. You put on a pound or two of muscle mass, which is not difficult to do in a strength training program. What is that going to do to your 10K? your marathon time. It's gonna trash it.
Right.
That's
Some
why
people
overfat are running slower, because they're, in addition to the excess body fat and all the problems that creates, there's additional weight there as well.
I mean, some people want to put on bulk and put on size and have different goals or aesthetic goals or what have you, but I think the concern there is this continued soreness. It's not pleasant, it's not enjoyable, and we also have this muscle weakness. So are there some modifications? I know people talk about doing the positive aspect of the lift only, where you lift the weight up and then drop it so you're not getting those eccentric contractions that lead to muscle soreness.
No, I think first you have to have some clear goals. What do you want to do? If you want to look really cool, if that's your goal, you want to look like you're a weightlifter.
Well, that's my job, Phil. I have to. Oh, okay. Wait. Well, we're just doing a podcast. No one's seeing us. All right.
No one's seeing us.
Okay.
That's one thing, and that's a problem. Because if you do it right, you're still going to look cool. You're not going to look as cool because you're not going to build these big muscles. And early in my practice, somehow, I know how it happened. I got one bodybuilder. I helped him. He referred a few bodybuilders. They referred a few bodybuilders. And all of a sudden, I had all these bodybuilders in my clinic. And I really didn't like it, because they were willing. That was the ultimate sport that would be more than willing to sacrifice their health and fitness just to look better. And that's not what I was all about. And so I ended up dismissing all of them because it was painful for me to work with them. So if we want to be, if we want to have big muscles, that's another discussion. And in most cases, that's not what people want. If you want to look cool, you can still look cool. So what you want to do is avoid the pain. You want to avoid the fatigue. You want to avoid the soreness. And you can do that by lifting in short. By lifting, and you can do this with one lift. You could do one lift that will give your entire body additional strength. What a deal. And not get weak and not get sore. And be able to run the next day, be able to lift the next day, be able to lift later in the day if you want. And you do that with a deadlift or a squat, where you're going to lift the weight and you're going to squat, and you do it so that you're able to do 5 or 6 squats without getting excessively fatigued. And that amount of weight is about 80% of your one-time lift, your one-time ability. So if you can lift 100 pounds one time, you can only do it once because it's so much weight for your body. Okay, now you want to take 80 pounds. You should be able to lift that 80 pounds 5 or 6 times without much stress. If you do that,
no soreness the following day. So
if you do that, there's no soreness the following day. You're not stressing your muscles. You don't require more than a minute or 2 of recovery, literally. And here's the bonus: you get strong. Well, think about Olympic weightlifters. Are they big, bulky people?
Only in the heavyweight division.
Only in the heavyweight division.
Alexiev.
They don't want to move up to the next level because there's more competition there. They want to stay slimmer. They want to stay leaner.
Yeah, Google Pocket Hercules, the greatest weightlifter pound for pound of all time, and he looked like a little gymnast, but he was lifting as a function of his light body weight. He was a very small man. Naim Suleimanoglu was one of his names. Different countries kidnapped him and changed his name so he could represent them in the next Olympics. It was like Bulgaria and Turkey, but his nickname was Pocket Hercules because he was a Pocket Hercules.
Yeah, and all these stories you hear about, mothers who their child is under the car and stuck, and the mother lifts the car. I mean, how does that happen? It goes back to the autonomic nervous system we talked about earlier, is that we all have this capability, but how do we translate that to getting stronger without getting sore? And the goal in that kind of a workout, and this is tied in with biofeedback. When I mentioned biofeedback before, this is how I help athletes get stronger by balancing their muscles. What we're trying to do is get the brain to contract more muscle fibers within the muscle. When we lift a weight, we contract a certain amount of muscle fibers. The more we contract, the more weight we lift. But we never contract 100% of those fibers. So if we can tease the brain to gradually enlist more and more fibers to contract in a lift, we'll automatically get stronger. And you can make somebody stronger in 2 minutes by doing biofeedback on a particular muscle, by training. This is how we treat stroke patients and brain injured people, is we train the brain to contract more muscle fibers. And it's not that hard to do. And in strength training, if you do it by your 80% of your one-time max lift, you're going to be in the ballpark. And then it only takes one lift. So if you only want to do squats, how long does it take to lift a certain amount of weight, lift it up, do 6 squats, put it down, and walk away? That's your workout. Well, I have something called slow weights. Slow weights is you've got a barbell over there in your living room or in your bedroom or in your kitchen, wherever, and it's sitting there on the floor. And whenever you have a moment, as you're walking by, you pick it up and you do 6 repeats of whatever, squat, say. And over the course of a day, maybe you do that 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times. Over the course of a week, maybe you do it 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 times. Man, you're going to get strong. And if you're not used to lifting, you're not going to bulk up, but you're going to look cool.
Oh, and because you're only doing one set at a time, you're not going to get this
completely.
This full fatigue scene like you do coming out of an hour CrossFit. If you're
exactly
right, okay, and so yet you're getting stronger. And what happens is, as you do this over the weeks, and you get stronger, you get to your 6 reps, and you say, "Wow, this is too easy." You don't add reps; you add weight. So this is different from the traditional go to the gym, do 12 reps, do 13. Come on, you can do one more. You can get to 15. That's trashing your body. You don't need to do that. In some sports you do. If you're a linebacker, if you're on the basketball team and you're 110 pounds, it's going to be really difficult to survive, so you're going to have to put on some weight. But for most people, they don't need to do that. They need to get stronger, though. And, the funny thing is, people who put on a lot of bulk are not necessarily stronger. Those bodybuilders I was talking about, they're all weak. A big muscle is not necessarily strong, and a small muscle is not necessarily weak. We've all seen the skinny guy, beat up the big muscle guy in martial arts or whatever. Strength is not
dependent on muscle size. It's dependent on how many fibers you contract, and that's a function, how many fibers you contract, which is a function of the brain.
Right. So the opposite example of your description, where you're recruiting more fibers to lift the weight, to get your nervous system functioning more optimally and doing the best it can with the existing muscle. The hypertrophy workout, where you tear apart your muscles, you get really sore, you go for a prolonged workout till you're depleting all the glycogen and walk out of there exhausted, and then refuel with the giant protein smoothies with plenty of sugar and other crap in there. That's when you blow up and get these huge muscles, which we mistakenly believe is more and more strength, the bigger size muscle.
Yep. And it's just not true that the bigger muscle is stronger. And but the problem is that we have created an environment that is a horror show. And when you injure yourself and you go to a physical therapist and they do some tests and they say, you're pretty weak, or you're a runner, you want to run a better marathon and you get evaluated and you can't jump more than 11 inches, you're pretty weak. Okay. What is that person going to do? They're going to look at the gym environment. They're going to see these big macho people sweating, looking in the mirror at themselves, lifting weights, men and women, and they're not going to do it. And if you're not a physically active person to begin with, and you break your hip at age 55, and the therapist says your muscles are very weak, you have to get stronger, otherwise you're going to have another fracture. Where are you going to go? You're not going to go to the gym. You're not going to go into that environment. And so the result is that we have this severe epidemic of weak people. Many of them are active people, many of which are endurance athletes. But
not naming any names, but many of you are endurance athletes. No offense.
Yeah, it's a reason. We could make a good argument to say that the reason for slower times over the decades is because of a trend of weakness that has also occurred. That could be a good theory. It could be a solid theory, but the point is, we want to individualize it, and we want to know, do you have excess muscle weakness? And if you're trying to run a better 10K or a better trail race, by doing nothing else, getting stronger is going to help immensely. And do the standing. I know that some gyms have equipment where you can stand on a mat and it'll time how long you're in the air and all that stuff. Those are great. But you could do it at home. And if you can't jump, more than, it depends on your age and all kinds of things. But, if you can't get well over 12 inches, you need to get stronger. And even if you can get to 15, you can still get stronger, and it'll reflect in better jumping ability. And then you're getting stronger, and that should translate into better race times. And not only better race times, but better health, number one, and better fitness, number two.
What a great goal to pair with improving your maximum aerobic function test. So you have that aerobic efficiency where you run around the track. I like to go 8 laps, Phil, and peg my heart rate at my maximum aerobic heart rate, and then time myself, and then to try to improve vertical jump. Or as you know, I'm an enthusiast of the high jump, so I have the graphic reminder there of what pegs the bar are at, and then each passing year, not getting any younger. Hopefully, the bar is not lowering at a faster rate than my age is increasing, and it's possible to to unwind a lot of these things that we consider to be aging just with, I'm going to make some modifications to my training schedule to eliminate those incidences of muscle soreness and go by my deadlift bar more frequently during the day and do, I do about 6 reps. So if I can do that 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, oh my gosh, that's going to add up to be a tremendous improvement in strength over a very short time without that repercussion of the breakdown, burnout from these exhausting workouts.
Yep, without a doubt. And you want to use intelligence in that approach. You want to, not get out of bed and go pick up your bar. You want to have been moving around a while so that you're warmed up, or do a warm up, an active warm up. If you're not eating enough protein, for example, it's going to be really difficult to get stronger. If you're a vegan, it's not going to be easy. I can guarantee you that. So,
no offense, again, you weak vegan endurance athlete, get out there and lift that deadlift bar, man, and go eat some eggs afterward.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil, I appreciate you spending the time. What a great show. So many wonderful insights. And I know you're doing some cool things over there at the website. So can you give a plug for the new products, the naturally sourced vitamins as opposed to the mechanized crap that we see at the big box stores, and how to get some?
Sure. We're always putting out new articles every week. We've got some bigger projects shortly coming out, ebooks and stuff. We have a new line of dietary supplements made from real food, real products that are not dangerous, a multiple vitamin mineral product, the B vitamins, all active B vitamins, which I don't think there's a product like that on the market right now. Natural vitamin C, the synthetic vitamin C's, it's well known that they can impair endurance, along with the high dose vitamin E.
But wait, when we buy vitamins at the big box store, everyone says, well, it can't hurt.
They can hurt. They can hurt, actually. The dangers of synthetic vitamins, there's a severe problem today with I have an article, it's coming out in the next week or two, and it has to do with synthetic folic acid being the synthetic version of folate as it's found in the active form, which we use in our B complex. But folate, when it gets into the skin and is exposed to light, is a cancer-promoting substance. And, of course, everyone listening to the show most likely goes out to exercise, and exposing folic acid to sunlight, even if it's early in the day or late in the day, even artificial light will do it. It converts that chemical into something really bad. So the synthetic vitamins are found in all processed foods because they're fortified. They're found in energy bars because they're fortified with this these junk vitamins, and they're dangerous. We also have a vitamin D product, which has vitamin K, the 2 forms of vitamin K, which you need to make vitamin D work. Man, talk about an epidemic. The vitamin D deficiency it's just a problem that is rampant. And the relationship between vitamin D and physical performance is really, really powerful. And if your vitamin D is not at a good level, there's no way you can perform, even if you do everything else right.
Well, we also have some difference of opinion from what the doctor says is a good level and what Phil Maffetone says. I remember proudly reporting some blood values to you, and I got my vitamin D up to 55, which is way off way above the normal or what your doctor's looking for, and you wanted to see me even higher than that. So when the patient comes back from their annual physical and everything looks normal, but vitamin D is down there at 31 or something, where do you stand on that? And why is there a disparate opinion from the normal blood values that are touted as healthy?
Well, there's a lag between the scientific evidence and the recommended levels that you have in the labs. And so the labs want to make sure you're not going to be, you're not going to develop disease. It's like, the amount of vitamin C we should eat. Well, they base it on developing scurvy. Well, we don't just want to avoid scurvy. We want to have enough nutrient to be healthy, and vitamin D is no different. If we look at what prevents skin cancer, how much vitamin D do we need to prevent skin cancer? There are studies about that, and those numbers are well into the 60s. So I kind of use that as my minimum. I like to have that vitamin D in the 60s, and there are still people walking around in the U.S. Those are the numbers we're using, who are down in the teens and even down, at 12 and 13. And quite often their doctors don't even say anything because they don't know what to say. But this is a serious problem. This is a very, very serious problem.
We have an increased cancer risk, too, from reading the vitamin D solution, Dr. Michael Holick, especially the reproductive cancers. And I think one of the stats was that people of African descent have an 84% increased rate of reproductive cancer, and that's because they're particularly harmed by the inability to manufacture vitamin D from sunlight, being that they're living at a disparate latitude from equatorial ancestry.
Well, it's that and the skin. The darker the skin, the more sunlight we need to get adequate vitamin D. And by the way, it should be obvious, but I need to mention it. We get our vitamin D from the sun. That's our best and most primary source of vitamin D. We don't get it from junk food. It's fortified in junk food. It's nice to get vitamin D in supplemental form from an animal source, vitamin D from animal foods. There seems to be a genetic requirement for both the food source, the best one being from animals, and the sunlight. But primarily, we get our vitamin D from sunlight. And if you have a low vitamin D and you decide you're going to get a nice tan without burning, of course, and then a few months later you get your vitamin D checked and it hasn't budged, then you've got a problem, and you've got to figure that out, or you've got to find a doctor who can help you figure it out. Because sometimes to get going, to get your levels to a level where the sun can now kind of take over, you might have to get an injection of 50,000 or more units of vitamin D, because you're so deficient, your body's resistant against it. And we see that this is common in people who are over fat, because increased body fat prevents vitamin D utilization from the sun. So this is not unusual.
Whew. More information at philmaffetone.com. You can get your vitamin D. I love the newsletter, too. So sign up for the newsletter. You get something, it seems like once a week, some really thoughtful articles, not just blather and marketing fodder, but really informative standalone pieces. So you're doing a great job there, Phil. We appreciate you so much. And thanks for spending time on the show. philmaffetone.com. Go check it out, people.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the show. We would love your feedback at getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And we would also love if you could leave a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a hassle. You have to go to desktop iTunes, click on the tab that says ratings and reviews, and then click to rate the show anywhere from 5 to 5 stars. And it really helps spread the word so more people can find the show and get over themselves, because they need to. Thanks for doing it. Let's talk about probiotics from Integro Health. Do you want me to sing the messages? Nah. But probiotics are an extremely important concept. Hopefully you're all in on the values, the benefits of nourishing a healthy gut microbiome so you can flourish in life. And that's the name of Integro's product, Flourish, a unique, extremely potent, living liquid probiotic. Yes, it's liquid form. How is it different from other probiotics we usually see in pills? This is the message from Integro. Microbes continue to thrive and metabolize in their own milieu. Do you like when companies use the word milieu to describe their product? I do. These include short-chain fatty acids, bioactive peptides, amino acids, enzymes, and minerals. The liquid base makes it acid stable, so microbes can survive the stomach environment and transit to the lower GI tract for integration to give you a healthy gut microbiome. There's 11 different strains in this thing, carefully hand-cultivated in the laboratory with precision to deliver 8 billion total CFU. Why take probiotics? Come on, you have to ask. It's going to strengthen your immune function, reduce systemic inflammation, the root cause of all disease, improve digestion, promote bowel regularity, relieve gas and bloating, get you going again after illness or antibiotic use. That's me, because I first got this shipment the very day I returned home from a Mexican vacation and had a stomach illness once again. What a bummer. So sad, because I love going down south, but I needed to repair and return to action quickly. So I started guzzling this stuff and had a wonderful return to health. I'm a very enthusiastic user and will be over the long run because I need all the help I can get. I don't know about you. When we're talking about our routine usage of antibiotics, the stress we put on our system and in the environment every single day, I especially notice my gut health is compromised when I engage in overly intensive athletic training, have trouble recovering. My gut is the first thing to go. So this is my go-to product, the Flourish probiotic in liquid form. Try it yourself. I love the delicious root beer float flavor. Just kidding, man. This stuff is no funny business. This is the real deal. It's very potent. It tastes fine. It goes down okay, but no root beer float flavor. Sorry. Take it. You'll love it. Go look at integrohealth.com for more information and to order shipped directly to your door in its unique liquid form. Flourish!